Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to SADS Foundation Live, number 101. 2 weeks ago, we celebrated our 100th, and it's great to be back with you. I'm Mike Ackerman, Director of Mayo Clinic's Genetic Heart Rhythm Clinic, the Winland Smith Rice Sudden Death Genomics Laboratory, and the Winland Smith Rice Comprehensive Sudden Cardiac Death Program. But as with the previous 100 episodes, I've had the privilege of being with you today on behalf of the Sudden Arrhythmia Death Syndrome Foundation, the SADS Foundation, led by our CEO, Alice Lauren. And we started this in February of 2020, March 2020, in the midst of that thing called COVID-19 pandemic. Yep, it's still going, but we're still going. And we have been so blessed and privileged to be with you every week, every Friday for a while, now every other Friday. And it feels good that it's another Friday that we're together. And today's a really special program. I say that for everyone, I guess. But I'm out here in DC, Washington, DC, and it's pretty exciting. It is the inaugural meeting, the first, of the Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy Society, the HCM Society. And the HCM Society just launched, dedicated to the disease HCM. Now, many of you in the SADS Foundation, I expect and suspect that you do not have HCM as your genetic heart disease, because we at the SADS Foundation partner with Lisa Salzberg from the HCMA, the Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy Association, which is the largest fully dedicated nonprofit advocacy organization for families with that genetic heart muscle disease called HCM. And we partner with them when we have a family inquire about us and we learn that it's HCM, we direct them to HCMA. Now, we have other CMs that we care for in the SADS Foundation, and those families start with the letter A, ACM, arrhythmogenic cardiomyopathy. And so those families with ACM, A Apple, and those other families with the genetic heart rhythm diseases, and you know who you are, long QT syndrome, CPVT, Brugada syndrome, Timothy syndrome, sometimes even short QT syndrome. And you find your home of support and advocacy that comes out of the SADS Foundation. Often we will focus this program on your questions, and I love those, but I have an interview that I get to do today, and you're going to really enjoy getting to know Katie. I know I am, and see what we learned there. But before, I have to show you two pictures. I don't know if I showed you that one. Did I? I bet I did. Yes. Jaden, 2.5, and Juniper is now 30 days old today. But then here's another picture, because this is a really cool story. This is Mayo, M-A-Y-O. Now, Mayo, I learned about yesterday. Saw this wonderful family back in the Winland Smith Rice Genetic Heart Rhythm Clinic here at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. Now a 6-year-old kid, great kid. They had such an amazing experience at Mayo last summer after his HCM heart surgery, and that they got him a dog. And because of their experience, they named their dog Mayo. So that's Mayo after Mayo Clinic. And it's made me wonder, I wonder how many families out there have maybe named a pet after their experience at the healthcare institution they were cared for, or after a doctor or somebody, a nurse. And so it'll be interesting to see if there's any Mayos. Now, I've heard that somebody out there has named a fish after me. So that's as good as it's gotten for my career, is there's a fish out there somewhere named Mike. So, but more important is last day of the month of September, tomorrow, October 1st, begins in the United States, the National Sudden Cardiac Arrest, SCA, Sudden Cardiac Arrest Awareness Month. And we'll be having activities from the SADS Foundation focused on sudden cardiac arrest awareness. In fact, later this month, there's going to be a drawing for a free automatic external defibrillator, an AED. And so we're kicking off SCA Awareness Month 1 day early. And we're doing that by interviewing a beautiful person with an incredible story, Katie Wildhagen. And so Anna, not Aaron, because Aaron gets a break after doing 100 episodes. Anna is filling in, and she's going to bring up Katie Wildhagen. Katie, welcome to SADS Live number 101.
Thank you, Dr. Ackerman, and thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's great to have you here. And your story, all I know about you, and we kept it that way, just like we do with the questions that come up so they don't get to be practice, is I was whispered that you experienced sudden cardiac arrest some 21 years ago in 2001, when I think you were 3 or 4 years old. Did I get that part right?
That's very sweet of you, but yeah, 18 years old.
Well, take us back to 2001. So you're 18, not 4, 18. Yeah. So everybody's doing the math quick on Miss Katie Wildhagen.
Don't do the math. Move on. Don't do
that. So you're 18. You're a senior in high school. Mm-hmm. What happened?
Well, so I'll kind of bring it back a little bit to what was leading up to it, because in hindsight, that all kind of played into it. Do you want me to tell you yet what we ended up knowing what happened or what it was, or?
No, take me. Yeah. So let me ask you this. So from what you just said, I gather that your cardiac arrest in 2001 was not your first warning symptom ever.
It wasn't, but I wasn't aware until after the fact. Then we.
So tell us what those warning symptoms were.
Yeah, those are important.
That you now know about. When did those start? What were those? And then we'll take us to the ground zero day of 2001 for your life.
So I think it was middle school. I was playing basketball and practicing, and I fainted. And I think it happened like twice, possibly, enough to where it was like concerning. And at the time I was a vegetarian, so we thought it was because I had low iron and all these different, things. But we never came up with an understanding of like why that happened. Maybe I was dehydrated, that was that. And they called it passing out. And I remember passing out at that time.
And you were how old, Katie?
So that I might have been like 15, 14 in middle school.
So I'm curious, with the age 15 playing basketball faints, low iron, did you get routed at that time to a heart specialist, or was this just you, family, and maybe a pediatrician saying you passed out, low iron, continue on?
Yes, it was like that. Okay. We'll look much further past maybe dehydration, and the fact, because I had chosen to be a vegetarian at the time. They kind of pinpointed like, oh, you have low iron, which I probably did, but that's what they attributed to, and then they moved on. We moved on. So from that point, I was still playing sports, went into high school. I had stopped playing basketball, but I was still playing softball. But then into my senior year, I tried out for the basketball team again. So I was then just finishing softball and was going to start playing basketball. And I had gotten mono. So I went through a really tough mono, bout of mono that fall, recovered from that, and then went in to play basketball. And it was in that season that I would start passing out again. But it was more like I was blacking out. And it was very, like I could see, like I'd be running down the court and I would see my vision just close in to black. And I would stop because, it's kind of scary. And I didn't really remember the feeling of like when I'd passed out before when I was younger. This is like a whole new feeling. So through that and some other events, I decided to actually quit basketball in the middle of that season.
During those spells, did you actually physically collapse instantly to the ground, or you could feel it happening and you sort of aborted what you were doing and it kind of passed?
Exactly. So basically I could feel it coming on. And so I would stop because if you start to almost faint, or, the world's closing in on you, you don't keep sprinting, so I would stop, and I wouldn't necessarily faint, but I would have to like stop myself and sit down, or, and I assumed I was out of shape, because I hadn't played basketball for 2 years. So I assumed I'm just out of basketball shape. Whatever's happening is me being lazy or out of shape. So I quit the team. I quit basketball, and that was it for that season. And then it was about 2 or 3 months later, with no other things that had come up or anything. I was sitting in church one Sunday morning, and I'm Catholic, and so when in Catholic church, you stand up and you kneel a lot, stand up and kneel, and we were in one of the kneeling points, and I used to joke with my mom during service, kind of mess with her to keep things kind of because I would get bored. So I used to joke with her and nudge her and stuff and, mess with her. But this morning I was kneeling, we were all kneeling, and I had no warning. Whereas other things that happened before, I could feel myself passing or feel something coming on. When this happened, there was no warning. I just was there one moment and wasn't the next moment. Wow. And so I was kneeling in the pew. And then this is all secondhand from my parents that were around me that tell me this, because I don't remember any of this. The last thing I remember was kind of messing with my mom and watching the people in front of me walk by. My mom said that all of a sudden she felt me nudge into her pretty heavy and thought that I was messing with her again. So she turned and she was like, "Katie, stop it," And she looked at me, and I was completely gray and just rigid. And then I slumped deeper into her because I was out at that point.
Yeah.
And so,
And so this is where you do your sudden cardiac arrest, is in Catholic church mass?
Church mass on a Sunday morning. I'm like, oh, where does that leave you?
Yeah, so we could unpack that in a lot of different ways.
Sure could.
But I'm wondering, so as for the audience to know, when we met just briefly before we came on, and this is the first time I met you, I told you not to tell me the diagnosis, and you did not. And so my head is spinning in real time now, trying to figure out, I wonder what Katie has wrong. And the reason I'm sharing that with the SADS family who's joining us is, when you first offered up, fainted during basketball. And then I was thinking, okay, maybe she's going to be an LQT1 person. Maybe she's going to be CPVT. But then you said later in your senior year that you kind of got tunnel vision, but you still could function. And that swung me away a little bit, because that's a little unusual for those genetic heart rhythm conditions. And then you're not doing anything, but you are, well, I don't want to say you're not doing anything when you were at Catholic Mass. You were doing something there. It comes out instantaneous, out of the blue, and down you go. And now, is it sudden cardiac arrest as defined by the whole drill, chest compressions, external shock rescue, or how did they or you define your cardiac arrest?
So that's the interesting part about it, is that I was probably out for maybe 2 to 3 minutes, and someone was about to start chest compressions because they had no pulse, no nothing, and there happened to be a nurse behind me in the pew behind us. She was about to start chest compressions, but then I believe the priest walked over and held her off for a moment and gave a blessing. And again, this is all, I'm hearing this from the stories afterwards, gave a blessing. And then once he was done with that, he walked away. She was about to start to do CPR, and I came back.
Wow. Yeah. So I'm not going to argue with the power of the priest's blessing.
Who knows?
But again, for those who are joining us and wondering now, what's the definition of sudden cardiac arrest? Because it's a bit controversial and confusing out there, because I know for myself, whatever that was for you, for me, I don't necessarily call that SCA, just for the families out there, because for me, sudden cardiac arrest requires electricity
Yeah.
to bring you back. That's my definition. And I think that's pretty much a standard definition. But maybe the priest delivered a different form of electricity to restore the heart to normal rhythm. But for whatever it was, you were down and out for a couple minutes. Yeah. You recover without the need of chest compressions, without the need of an external defibrillator shock, for which the drawing's coming up, everybody, for you to get a free one out there. And then what happens? I guess after Mass, you go to the doctor, or what?
So Mass stopped at that point, and ambulance came. I chose not to go in the ambulance to the hospital for my own reasons, because one of the paramedics was a guy I used to date, and I didn't want to do that.
This is quite a story.
I know. So my parents drove me to the hospital. So from there, I was in the hospital for about 2 weeks, going through tests to find out what happened. And I was in that. Yeah, I was there for 2 weeks at that point. And that conversation has come up so much between those doctors and then my heart doctor later, of how did that work out in terms of how did the heart go back to normal rhythm without an external shock? Because everything that we looked at going into that was deemed it like, yes, this is what happened.
Yeah. But so you leave your first hospitalization probably in your life, because you're a healthy young person.
Yeah.
And you leave that 2-week hospitalization with them telling you and your mom and dad, Katie, you did that thing at Mass because of a heart condition called, what did they call you at that time?
Long QT syndrome. That's what
they did.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this was back 21 years ago. So this was again, before there was a lot more known about it. I understand that in the last 20 some years, more has been found.
Right.
And our family is actually part of one of the studies with it through Rochester. So, but so yeah, long QT. And then I believe there's another level of something with, like, I'd have to ask my heart doctor, but there's something like another arrhythmia involved with it as well.
Okay, so you get diagnosed then after that episode as having long QT syndrome as the reason. And now, so again, this is 2001. Clinical genetic testing did not start happening in the United States until 2003. So the only thing you would have had was potential for research-based genetic testing. I'm assuming you've been genetically tested, but before we get to that, how did they choose to treat you then in 2001 if they felt that you had a very close call, if it weren't for the priest? What did you get? What was the treatment program that you left with? You left with the diagnosis of long QT, and what as your treatment?
Well, this is another part of the story, because the initial heart doctor we had seen said, okay, you're going to take beta blockers, and that's it. Okay. And so after that 2 weeks there, I left and I was supposed to be on those beta blockers, and I did take them, I believe. But within a few months, I'm not exactly sure how this conspired, but my mom got a hold of a specialist. And I think a lot of things added into why she further wanted to reach out to somebody. But there had been a young girl in the town next to us who had died on the court. She was a cheerleader, I believe, and she had sudden cardiac arrest and died. And I think my mom seeing that, it shook her a bit. And I think she reached out to the parents to kind of ask their experience and talk to them about it. And I believe they had said, we should have, because they had seen a doctor before. They said that we should have put the pacemaker and defibrillator in, and they had chosen not to. So hearing that story, my mom was really motivated then to find a specialist, I believe, to kind of get more information on what was going on, because she felt it wasn't being taken as seriously as maybe it should be taken. Yeah. So a specialist had just happened to move into town, like one of 3 specialists at that time. But he was a pediatric cardiologist though. But I got to see him, and from meeting with him and him looking at everything within, you know, one visit with him, he suggested, he was like, if this, were my child, I would suggest we put the pacemaker and defibrillator in based on everything. So that's
and
6 months later.
And so was that within a year of?
6 months.
So again, for everybody out there, I always start a skeptic. So for myself as an investigator, I'm doubtful until I see proof with my own eyes. So at this point, I'm so curious about your data, Katie, and your story, because I'm not feeling it for long QT syndrome as the label, but in 2001, as you probably knew and your parents learned, the community was really defibrillator aggressive. It was sort of was, if in doubt, install the machine, protect. And I think it's safe to say that over your last 20 years, we have become far more competent and confident to be able to now say that even if long QT was the correct diagnosis, that most people do not need and should not receive an implantable defibrillator, that we can usually treat things very well. But now you have one.
Yeah.
And so now we have a 20-year story of owning your defibrillator inside you.
Yeah.
So what unfolded with it? What's been the score with the defibrillator? Complications, how many? And VF rescue shocks, how many?
No complications and no shocks.
Wow.
And that might lead to the point of you saying, and again, my doctor at the time, as I understood it, his reputation was very much like, be safer than sorry. And that question was something that like I struggled with for a long time, of whether I really needed this pacemaker and defibrillator or not. Like, did we do something that we didn't need to do? And it was something that my mother and I struggled with a lot too, because she was really like, she really wanted to make sure her daughter was taken care of. So she was very much on the side of like, we need to do that. And I was a young kid, having just went through this whole thing, going into college. And it was very, stressful for me to understand if I'm going to have this thing for the rest of my life. Hindsight, though, I will say, obviously I'm still here. So that's a huge plus. I don't feel any sort of regret about having it. Even was an aggressive choice at the time. I'm thankful that I do have it, because I did choose a path where I'm physically, I'm a personal trainer and physical fitness, where I would hate to have to like pull back on that.
Right.
So
thankfully, you have had 20 years of having a smooth ICD journey where you did not experience this, that, and the other that could go wrong with the device.
Right.
And it's also given you and your team 20 years of additional observation of you. And over those 20 years, has the certainty or confidence in the diagnosis of long QT syndrome changed at all? Or are they more certain that it is long QT because you had genetic testing and it found the X that marks the spot? What's happened?
Yeah, so it is 100% long QT through that genetic testing over the years. So that is fully confirmed. And there's 4 or 5 other people in the family that have long QT as well, and one other family member that has now a defibrillator and pacemaker as well. So that has been confirmed through genetic testing.
And do you know your genetic flavor of long QT to be able to say, I am LQT 1, 2, 3?
I'm supposed to, but I don't. I know it, but I don't exactly remember. My doctor, I don't know it.
Okay.
I'm like, dang it, they're going to ask that, and I should know this. My doctor would be like, Katie, are you kidding me?
Right. And so with at least you're under the impression that somebody has found the cause. To be able to tell you that you have genetically mediated LQT number something. Have they chosen over these years then to treat you with device only sort of antidote protection, or did they also put you on medicine?
Well, I refused medicine. So that was my choice, because I did take the beta blockers for a while. And the way it made me feel so sluggish and slow, I just couldn't continue with it. And I felt, against my doctor's better wishes, that if I was with the pacemaker and defibrillator, then I was good and I didn't need the beta blockers. Again, not something that my doctor would have liked, but that's what I chose. This last device change, we did have the question of whether I should just go to, whether I wouldn't need the pacemaker, whether I just need the defibrillator just in case. But because I went to a new doctor out here in LA, and my doctor was in Nebraska. So the new LA doctor looked at everything and said, I have questions about this because I think that we should just put you on the device only, like the defibrillator only. And I have questions about this because everything's unclear. So he consulted with the Nebraska doctor, and apparently there's something else in there that does kind of require the pacing. And so it was in the air for a minute there as to whether I should not have it or not have the pacing involved. But when it came down to it, they both agreed that it's best to have it still.
Yeah. And how has it felt like? You mentioned sort of being freer in your case to do the things you love to do, knowing that you had kind of the ultimate life insurance present underneath your collarbone.
Yeah.
So what has it been like? It sounds like now, fast forward 20 years from this 18-year-old senior in high school, you're a personal trainer, you're a social media influencer. Do you think about your device? How does it affect, or does it affect your sort of mental health, your emotional well-being?
I would say for the first 10 years or so, it was a constant thought. Like, I really was testing boundaries with it for a long time, and I was unsure a lot. And it was a constant thing, right? But after a while, and after having it changed a couple of times, it really hasn't. Now I just see it as a blessing. It's a peace of mind. I see it as like my little buddy that, like, I can go do all the things I want to do to a certain extent, and I know it's got my back. So it really has been a journey of like a mental and emotional acceptance of it, to like really being proud of it and knowing that it's why I can do a lot of these things, or just the fact that it's there and it's peace of mind is great as well. So it's really been a journey.
And have you done, or since I don't know what your influence is in social media, what are you doing as a social media influencer? What's your areas of
fitness,
passion and excitement?
Yeah, so it's within fitness, and it really is about like helping other people find their guidance through fitness. Because for me, I had to stop playing sports when I got the defibrillator and all that stuff, right? So, when the heart thing happened. So that was a huge like hole in my existence. And so I filled it actually with fitness. Again, like against my doctor's, wishes, but that was what I found. Like, with my workouts were my passion and the way I could clear my mind and find my purpose. So that's what I wanted to then give to other people, is to help them find that for themselves as well. So it really is focused on that. It's focused on women's fitness, to help them women understand, like, to get in the gym and feel comfortable in the gym, and to find our emotional well-being there as well. So that's what I do.
That's great.
Really.
Yeah. And when you were caught at age 18, 2001, I joined the staff at Mayo Clinic in 2000, and as a new staff person looking over the landscape, you got caught in the phase in which the law of the land was sort of, if in doubt, install a defibrillator and kick them out of every sport.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's been like that since.
Yeah, and it really changed. I mean, and we were very much SADS Foundation, my program, Mayo Clinic. I think people will look back and say that's where the change began.
Yeah.
Because we raised our hand and we said, we got to do better than this. We are ruining lives with this approach.
Yeah.
We're going to be converting people to, depressed, overweight, sedentary couch potatoes, and we've got to do better. And so, like, I'm so excited. I just got a text yesterday from one of my patients telling me he just got joined or signed with one of the NBA minor leagues.
I mean,
so,
that's incredible.
Yeah, and another one of my long QT patients got a silver medal in the Olympics last summer. And so it's so different than the 18-year-old getting diagnosed in 2001. And I can imagine you could probably even take yourself back emotionally to that time when the doctor's telling you, that you young Miss 18-year-old, forget about doing sports in college.
Mm-hmm.
Your sports are over. And I think
that was tough. Yeah.
We can do so much better than that. We should be doing so much better than that.
And you guys have been through all the research that's been going on, which is wonderful. And I've been like a front row seat to all that research as well. So it's been amazing to see. But you're right. It was definitely in that little window of time where it was so uncertain.
Yeah. If you think back to what symptoms you had when you were 15,
Mm-hmm.
and then what happened in that 2-week hospitalization after Mass, what do you wish the medical community or the healthcare community would have known or might have done that could have made your experience journey better, different?
Well, I will say my doctor, the first initial doctor we saw, was so unaware of what long QT syndrome even was. So, and that's just because of the time, it just wasn't something that was fully known. So that was tough because it was like trying to like, he didn't know what was going on. I will say the doctor we ended up getting with, that I spent the years after that with, was such a blessing, because although he was very conservative with his, he was like, no sports, no, he was a very conservative doctor on that end. He was so kind and so supportive. And if I ever came back to him and said, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be a personal trainer, he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes, I am. Then he said, okay, go do it. So I would say that I understood that it was so uncertain that, there wasn't much more we could do.
Yeah.
Do appreciate all the research that has been done. Because like I've said, I've seen it all. I've seen it change over the 20 years. Like, we've gotten notifications that because of the work they've done with our family's genetics gene study, that they then, we were notified when they found the exact gene that could tell people that they have it in utero. Like, so I just appreciate the research that has been done since then. And I have grace for understanding the fact that, like, we just didn't know it at the time that it happened with me. It would have been wonderful had it been, 20 years later and it happened and they're like, okay, you're good. You just have this. Don't worry about it, and
Right.
But like you said, I was just caught in that early era of knowing.
And I think I might have caught just a little glimpse of a furry creature.
Oh, yeah.
Now I'm just curious, since I showed a picture of Mayo, which this family named after Mayo Clinic. Now, you didn't by chance name that dog after your heart doctor, did you?
No. Dr. Erickson? No. His name is Kingsley. He's cute, huh?
Yeah.
He pretends not to look at the camera. Like, he pretends like he can't look at it.
Kinsley, we'll see if, Kinsley, here's Mayo.
You see that floofer, bud?
Yeah, huh?
Yeah, he's a sweetheart.
Huh.
Yeah.
When you think of what you saw in real time now unfold from age 18 to just before a special birthday coming up next month. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
What do you want to see happen in this space in the next 10 years? What would make you, as a patient, as an advocate, as a social media influencer, say that the SADS Foundation and the community of professionals interested in doing these diseases better, that we will have accomplished during this next decade?
I think what I understood is that the more and more the patients can communicate with each other and tell each other our experiences and stories, I think it's so helpful because as a young person at 18 in 2001, where we didn't have social media and that kind of stuff, I really felt alone for like 15 years of this. You know, like I didn't have a community of people. I didn't have SADS was there, and thankfully my mom was always somebody who'd be like putting the SADS newsletter in front of me. So that was helpful. But I didn't really see that community until I started using like the hashtag, and recently decided to like kind of tell more of my story in the last like 5 years or so. And I realized so many more people have this or something similar, or have a device that just really needed to hear that somebody else has it and is okay, or that somebody else is, you know, able to play sports. And I saw, you know, seen stories of athletes, you know, thriving with it. And so the more and more we can share our stories with each other and be in community that way, I think is going to be so helpful. I've had, I would say 10 or 12 people reach out to me over the, you know, last couple of years who I stay in contact with, who've asked me questions about my experience, and it's helped them kind of with theirs. They've just gotten a device. So I think the more community, you know, aspect we do with this is going to be really incredible.
Well, it's great to hear you say that, Katie, because I know the SADS Foundation, we've always been that place of support for the families to call in and to really walk the journey with them. But this idea of creating community among the families is newer, I would say. It's a newer chapter for us at SADS Foundation in the last 5 years of our existence. You know, we have staff leadership in Anna, who she does an amazing job of creating the community in this social media world, and have brought people together. We have Genevieve Eccles, one of our newer members on SADS, who's done a great job of creating a community for some of the SADS Foundation teenagers, for them to meet and chat. And so I think that hearing you say that clearly was a need for you, and that you're seeing that change, that you want to see greater, you know, patient level, family level community get established for sharing stories, for sharing hope. And is really, really, really encouraging. And so, like so many people, Katie, I want to thank you. Julie is saying, Katie, you are an inspiration. One of my favorite people, Lene, is saying that Kingsley is adorable.
He really is.
Yeah, and Lene, thank you for sharing your story, and I just want to thank you, Katie, for taking the time. I thank you for winning in this journey of life, and continuing to do well. And I wish you all the best as you enter a new decade and a new chapter of life. I'm sure it will be great for you. For our families out there, thanks again for joining us. If you're watching live, thanks for tuning in live. If you're going to be watching this on recording, this was September 30, 2022. And we enter tomorrow in the United States, the National Sudden Cardiac Arrest Awareness Month. We're grateful that this was one of the good laws passed by Congress to declare October Sudden Cardiac Arrest Awareness Month. We need to increase the awareness. Obviously, if we are aware and we act early, tragedy almost never happens, and that's been a good thing. So for all of you, join me in 2 weeks for SADS Foundation Live, episode number 102. Until then, take care, everyone. And Katie, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.